Rumble. It is good to see you all. Thank you for joining the Liz Wheeler Show today. I am your host, Liz Wheeler. We have a very special guest joining us here in just a moment because we have a very somber, a very frightening, a story that gives us a peek into the reality of what we are facing against the left right now in our country. A leftist has just been arrested for an assassination plot against a conservative commentator. And, listen, we get a lot of hate as conservatives, especially those of us in the public eye, a lot of nasty comments online. But there's a difference between a nasty comment, even a threatening comment, or a credible threat of violence against one and one's family. And this was a credible enough threat of violence that the Department of Justice has arrested George Isabel Jr., a 69-year-old man, for threatening to kill Benny Johnson and his entire family. This is the Department of Justice Attorney General Pam Bondi hosting a press conference announcing the charges against this despicable man. Take a look.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for being here. We've been living through a horrific cycle of political violence in this country. We've seen attacks against police officers, federal agents, including the deadly shooting in the ICE facility in Dallas. Night after night, Antifa wreaks havoc on our streets of our cities. In Minnesota, a gunman murdered a state lawmaker and her husband. It was horrific. An anti-Semitic lunatic tried to burn down Governor Shapiro's house while he was in it with his wife and young children. This week, authorities arrested a man outside a Catholic church in Washington, D.C., with hundreds of explosive devices. And on September 10th, our nation stopped in its tracks with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. We miss him dearly. Unfortunately, I'm here today to talk about similar threats that were made against Benny Johnson and his wife, Kate. Benny's a well-known media personality carrying a message very similar to Charlie's, grounded largely in faith and love of country. Just days after Charlie's assassination, Benny received a letter at his home where he and Kate are raising their beautiful, beautiful young family. The author of this letter made it very clear that he hated Benny because of his views, and he wanted Benny dead. This was a coward hiding behind a keyboard who thought he could get away with this. That's why we're standing up here today. You are not going to get away with threatening people in this way. And I'm proud to announce that we have arrested the author of this letter. George Isbell Jr. was taken into custody this morning, and we are charging him federally with mailing threatening communications. It is a crime, and if convicted, he is going to prison. This was incredible teamwork. Benny called me right away. Chief Burkall, thank you. You were on it right away. Matt Fodor and all the FBI agents. Thank you, U.S. Attorney Kehoe. All of the U.S. Postal Service, FBI, state and local law enforcement working together. This is what it's about.
Now, Benny Johnson joins us on the show today. Today's episode is sponsored by Kindred Harvest. You guys need to know what's in the tea that you drink every day. The Chinese tea industry has flooded America with products contaminated by microplastics and heavy metals. They certainly don't care about your health. They care about your wallet. Kindred Harvest is the American answer so that you can still drink the tea that you love. Third-party lab-tested, zero microplastics, zero heavy metals, blended and packaged right here in the United States. No glue, no ink, no compromises. They have it all. Morning energy, evening herbal. It's clean tea for your entire family. I like the immunity tea. My husband likes the sleepy time tea. My 4-year-old daughter likes the caffeine-free cinnamon tea. Stop trusting China with your family's health. Choose American quality. Choose Kindred Harvest. Go to kindredharvest.co and use code Liz for 20% off. That's kindredharvest.co. Use code Liz for 20% off. Benny Johnson, host of The Benny Johnson Show. He's a prominent conservative commentator. He needs no introduction. Joins us on the Liz Wheeler Show today. Benny, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you, Liz. It's my honor.
All right, Benny, this is so horrifying. I mean, my heart goes out to you just as someone who's also raising young children, to have your home, which is, supposed to be your safe space, if you will, To have that threatened by someone who is actually a credible threat, not just a nasty keyboard warrior. Walk us through exactly what happened here. I mean, you probably get a lot of fan mail, a lot of hate mail. How did you know this was different?
Yeah, Liz, you are a mother. I know a proud mother and a wife, and I am a proud father of 4 little children and a husband. And parenting is hard enough, right? It is like the hardest thing that you can do is to try and there's no instruction manual. It's like it's amazingly difficult to do, and it takes all of your effort. And so to the parents out there, this is a movement about ensuring that you can raise your kids in safety and security, whether it's from terroristic threatening of left-wing violence, which happened to me specifically in name when this individual, George Isbell Jr., said that he would blow my head off in an open field, just like Charlie Kirk, and watch my blood splatter on the concrete, or whether it's from terroristic threatening of homicidal criminals who get let out of jail time and time again and scare you and your children out of the parks and off the streets. What America First is a movement of pro-family. And why is that important? Because actually, Liz, as you know, the things that make you happy in life are having a relationship with God, falling in love, getting married, having children. These are the things that bring purpose and true joy to your life. It's also something that is predominantly found only on the right. The right are the family of parents, and all the data shows this. The vast majority of parents in this country vote Republican. In fact, the vast majority of single people actually are amongst the Democrat Party. This is why when J.D. Vance calls them childless cat ladies, he's right. The data actually proves that. And so what point am I trying to make here?
I was never offended by that. I was like, I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. And you've seen the way that they behave. And this is the way that they behave. The point I'm trying to make here is, how can you possibly justify sending a terrorist letter wanting to orphan my children, wanting to widow my wife, wanting to do whatever I assume horrible things have been sent to you? Anybody who even, pokes their head up in some type of prominence in the Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump ecosystem gets a deluge of death threats. And the reason why it happens is because these people are miserable. They are godless. They often don't have families. They have no idea the effect that this has. And so I don't want it to be something that is normalized. And so, Liz, I said, damn it, we are going to actually do something about this one. And we've been getting death threats for a long time. I think a lot of people, in this industry get them. But what I said was, because this was mailed to our home, perhaps there's something here. We called the police. The police referred it to the FBI. The FBI found a DNA match. They worked with the U.S. Postal Service in order to figure out where it was mailed from, who mailed it. And then when the FBI raided this individual's home, he immediately confessed, yeah, I'm the guy who did this. Of course, this is a crime. And I'm not here to say I'm the only one that's ever received a death threat. That's obviously untrue. What I'm here to say is that, I am very proud of working with the Trump administration in order to make sure that perhaps we can stop it together.
Yeah.
By making an example of this individual, we can stop this, because we are a movement of families, and you can't have a pro-family movement if parents are being terroristically threatened. The final thing I'll say here, Liz, is this. It's not going to work. The number one, I'm a Christian, and the most prominent phrase in the Bible is do not be afraid. Fear not. It's found hundreds of times in any translation of the Bible. And God commands us to live courageously. God gives us a spirit of courage. God is the author of life and death, and he has a purpose for all of our lives, and it is not to cower in fear. And so it's going to backfire. It's not going to work. And I'm very, very proud to be part of a movement that stands courageously against these terroristic threats and saying, we will not be afraid.
Yeah. And I really appreciate you saying that too, because it is not, it's an open secret that anybody that works in the conservative movement experiences this on a daily basis. I mean, you and I have both been dealing with this for the last decade. No secret, of course. We don't often talk about it because what's the point of talking about it? You don't want to bring attention to it in a sense. But it does take sometimes one person to take a leadership role to say, actually, we have recourse here. It's not just, personal self-defense, arming ourselves or securing our house or whatever it might be, making sure that our family's protected. Sometimes it takes a leader to make a policy change, to go to law enforcement and say, hey, I'm going to set up a system with law enforcement to show people who might consider sending these threats that if you do this, law enforcement now knows how to track you down. They're going to track you down and you're going to spend a significant amount of time in prison. That will serve as a deterrent to people considering doing this. I do want to ask you, though, this DNA match that you mentioned on this letter, that fascinates me. Does this individual have a prior criminal record? How did they have a DNA match?
Yeah, so I don't really want to comment on that. It's his history is on the internet and has been cataloged by quite a few sleuths. Not a good hombre, I guess you could just say. But it's an ongoing case, so I'm just going to stick to the facts of the case right now and let this be adjudicated in court. Again, you can see the filings; they're all public, and you can go through and search his records and
look to see what his DNA. Well, the
yes,
fact that he had
see that
DNA.
This is totally credible. To see that this is totally credible,
right?
And that somebody could have done something really terrible to my family. And again, Liz, this is about simply saying, like, we got to draw the line somewhere. So the line shouldn't be he's dead, right? The line shouldn't be like he's dead in a field. The line should be that there were at the very least mitigation efforts taken in order to stop crimes. And as you said in your open, incitement, violence, terroristic threatening to kill and murder and maim someone is not covered under the First Amendment.
Right.
You cannot do that. Yeah, that is terrorism to families. And so I'm sick of families, the good-hearted, good Christian families of our movement being terrorized by these godless demons. And so we did something about it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And on this family thing, I spoke to the Claire Booth Lewis Center for Conservative Women over the weekend. It was their women's summit, their college women's summit. So it's a bunch of 18 to 22-year-old young women, conservative, who are looking to be part of politics, but also embracing femininity and their role in the family. And we talked about how marriage and for them motherhood is not just a job. It's not just what they want to do. That the family is this earthly representation of the Trinity. It's God's way of showing us the mystery of the Trinity. That God wants us to live in heaven with Him in full communion, and that the eternal exchange of love between the Father and the Son, that's the Holy Spirit. And that's mirrored in the family when a husband and wife become one flesh and their exchange of love begets new life. This is another piece of evidence that what we're facing here is not just bickering between the left and the right. It is a spiritual battle, good versus evil. And in a sense, of course, the family's under attack because of what it represents. So my question to you, you mentioned godlessness. You mentioned that these people are at least captured by demons. How does this happen? Is there a pipeline that you see that's creating these young men or creating ideological capture of these young men? And policy-wise, what needs to be done to stop it?
Yeah, you can go back into the first chapter of the Bible to see exactly where this all comes from, right? So what is the nature of God? To create and to make something beautiful. It is very good. It says in the first chapter of Genesis about God's creation. God said it was very good, right? It's like this was awesome, creating the world and creating man. If you look to the definition of Satan, the definition of what is Satan? What is the mark of the beast? Well, that's to steal, kill, and destroy. It is the absolute opposite, an inverse of God. It is the polar negative of God. And so if you're looking at to find Satan in this world, look to who is wanting to kill and wanting to steal, like stealing Charlie Kirk from his children and his wife, and to destroy, right? And that's what they want to do. The nature of God is to create, and He gives in man, in the creation of man and woman, He gives the mark created in God's image. That is the mark of value, something that He didn't give to the animals. He gave mankind a mark of eternal value, celestial value. And if you don't agree, if you defy God, then the first thing you're going to do is defy God's first law to man. The first thing that He says to His creation, Liz, is go multiply, be fruitful. That's the first command of God to man. And it wasn't the Ten Commandments. It wasn't in the New Testament. It was go multiply and be fruitful. And if you defy God, if you deny God, then you'll want to do the opposite of that. You won't see value in human life, just like all the every Bolshevik and every Soviet revolution, every socialist revolution has always seen human life as something that is annoying, something that is to be done away with if it becomes inconvenient. Obviously, the modern abortion movement is the exact same thing. And so you can see the thesis of what is human life. Is human life a precious creation of God that has value because we are created in God's image, or is it an inconvenience? Like, for instance, Charlie was an inconvenience, clearly, to the left. And Charlie's life, and so was President Trump. President Trump was a massive inconvenience to the left. Ironically, President Trump delivering what the left has been screaming about for the last couple of years, delivering peace in the Middle East and liberating Gaza, so to speak, today. But nonetheless, I mean, the point is that Trump was an inconvenience to their power. And so they wanted to kill Trump too. They put a bullet through Trump's head. They put a bullet in Charlie. And they do it to every single one of us if they can, because they don't believe in God. That is why I call it godless. You cannot want to kill your political opponents if you believe in God. And they deny God's command to man, which is to be fruitful and multiply. And so they hate that. Ultimately, they hate themselves. They're denying their creator.
They do. And I think, it's funny, whenever we talk about God on the show, there's like a portion of people who are like, listen, we need to talk more about God and culture and politics. And there are a portion of people that are like, don't get preachy. And I feel like we've sort of broken through that wall after Charlie's murder, because when you come face to face with this kind of evil, you realize that if evil exists, then good must also exist. And you look, you ask yourself that question, well, what is good? If evil exists and good exists, what is good? And if you're a truth seeker, then you find God in that. And I think the godlessness point is extremely key to me from a strategic standpoint too, because when you look at who's behind some of these radical leftist groups, whether it's Antifa, whether it's armed queers, whether it's the Socialist Rifle Association, whether it's the American almost billionaire Roy Singham, who hides out in communist China because he's a communist. He's funding, the anti-ICE violence in Los Angeles that we saw, those riots. He's funding the Students for Justice in Palestine, the pro-Hamas riots that we saw on college campuses.
Yeah.
His money goes through these leftist groups towards these very violent.
Where are they, Liz?
Transgender militia.
Not to interrupt you, but news of the day. Where the hell are they? Their balls fall off? Do their kifas fall off? Where are they today? President Trump just delivered the thing they've been taking over college campuses for, marching through the streets, burning cities down. Trump just delivered it to them. He liberated the Palestinians. He brought peace in the Middle East. Isn't this a free Palestine movement? Isn't this what they've always wanted? Where the hell are these people exactly? They're total frauds, Liz. Like, they should be marching 100%. The street. They should be marching the street today with giant Donald Trump placards saying, my president, my president.
In Israel that said, God bless the peacemaker, a big portrait of Donald Trump here. You're exactly right.
Trump's a really bad Hitler. He's so bad. He should not do that for Halloween. He's such a bad Hitler. Yeah.
I mean, it is one of those moments when the true colors of the left are on full display here, because they should be grateful. They should be crying if they really believe it was a genocide in Gaza and Trump saved the Palestinians from that. This is what they've been fighting for. But of course, it's all a thin mask for what, Benny? It's a thin mask over their communist ideology, which is not me inferring their ideology. It's their words admitting that they are motivated by communism. And what is the Catholic Church? And this is true, by the way. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic or whether you're non-denominational Christian or Protestant or evangelical or whatever. The Catholic Church for centuries now has defined communism as emanating from hell, from the satanic, that this is not just a stupid, bad, dangerous, corrupt, power-hungry ideology. This is an ideology of the devil. It is fundamentally opposed to God. And when you put all of that together, it almost makes the chaos in our culture, this violence, this assassination culture, it almost makes it make sense.
Yeah, well, if you read the Communist Manifesto, the first thing that you got to take down that Marx puts, by the way, this is in the prologue. This is not even getting into the Communist Manifesto. You got to say, so the first thing that you got to do, you got to take down the capitalist entities. All right, got it. That's what most people focus on. You got to seize the means of production. Okay. They missed the next sentence, Liz, which says the family and the church. The next things you must attack are the funny how that gets left out, right? Of Hollywood or in like modern communism. Why don't we ever hold them to account? So you want to destroy the church. That's what Marx writes. That's the next thing that needs to go. The next thing after that is the family unit. So make them own it. Like, shove it down their throats.
Yeah.
So which churches are you going to destroy? Which temples are you going to destroy? It says you're going to get rid of all churches. Oh, okay. Try explaining that to Muslims or Jews in their synagogue or Christians, inside of their cathedrals. So make that case, please. Like, make them live out that value, because it's obviously what they want. It's what their little hedonistic, blasphemous Bible says to do. Karl Marx tells them to do this. So, like, why don't we ever call them on that? You're right. It is the game plan.
Think about
it says so right there.
Rules for Radicals. Who did he dedicate that book to? He dedicated that book to the devil. That's not a coincidence. That's not something said tongue-in-cheek, even though the left likes to deny that that's the case. It's not. So all this being said, I know it's an active investigation into the terroristic threat that was sent to you. Is there any ties to these groups, to Antifa, to these leftist organizations? Is this a Lone Ranger threat, or have you been able to trace a connection?
From what I've heard, this guy has a major history in pornography business, and has, a very dodgy past. Yeah, that's what I've heard. And we could spiral off into a whole new conversation about the evils of porn, and how it is probably one of the arch evils of the modern society is the dehumanization, human trafficking, sex trafficking, that pornography mainstreams into the minds of generally young men.
Yes.
And how that again ties into, we are not created in God's image, a hedonistic and totally amoral view of who human beings are. I'm not sure we have enough time to get into that in the show, but that's obviously a massive problem. I see Pornhub being banned in like 17 states. I'm like, yes,
I know.
Yes. Thank you.
And
like a couple of European.
That the First Amendment protects it. I'm like, give me a break. You think the founding fathers wanted to protect furry porn, the creation, the dissemination, the profit from that? I don't think so. Listen, 5 years ago, if you had said what you're saying right now, even Republicans would have been like, Benny, come on, this is not what we're going to talk about here. We don't want to talk about the social issues. And politicians on both sides of the aisle don't want to talk about this for probably pretty obvious reasons. However, I think that we are going to see a cultural shift in the way that pornography is viewed because, again, of the very obvious correlation between, think about the young man, the alleged assassin of Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson, and his transgender lover. What were they associated with? Furry pornography. And if you don't know what furry pornography is, I plead with you, do not Google it. Do not Google it. It is the most demented, the most disgusting, it is just demonic. It's not just, when I say just, it's not just vanilla Playboy from the 1950s, which I still don't condone, but at least properly ordered sex, but outside of the context where it's properly ordered. That's not what furry pornography is. And there's a correlation between this deviant sexual behavior and the violence that we're seeing committed against the right.
Yeah, I just couldn't agree with you more. Please don't Google it.
Please don't Google it. All right, Benny, I know you have to go. I appreciate you being on the show. I know this is hard to talk about. Yeah. Please give your best to, or give my best to your wife. I'm praying for you guys. And I really appreciate you taking a leadership role on, holding accountable the left when they try to harm our families. I thank you for doing that.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. We're going to be at Charlie Kirk's Freedom Memorial service at the White House tomorrow. We're going to be honoring Charlie to give us an opportunity to also talk about this major, you have to call it out for what it is. Everybody attacked me during the press conference because I kept saying this is left-wing violence. Yeah. But you have to actually call out evil. And most importantly, as Christians, you cannot make peace with evil. You cannot unite with people who want to kill you. It's time for us to have this conversation in the country. Thank you, Liz, for having it.
Yeah. Amen to that. God bless, Benny. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Liz.
All right, guys. ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. What an absolute coward. And by the way, the mainstream media are not just dishonest. They're not just stupid. Of course, we always say they're propagandist of the left, but George Stephanopoulos takes it even to a higher level than this. George Stephanopoulos was quite literally, now he's a host on ABC News, but he was quite literally Bill Clinton's fixer. A high-level political operative whose job it was to manipulate the minds of the American people when Bill Clinton was president. Now he's in a prominent position at ABC News. If it doesn't demonstrate the point about the mainstream media, I don't know what does. Perhaps the video I'm about to show you will. But George Stephanopoulos was interviewing Vice President J.D. Vance over the weekend, and he had the audacity. This is how despicable the mainstream media is. He had the audacity to cut randomly, out of the blue, awkwardly, This is definitely not how the program usually flows. And George Stephanopoulos is a pro enough to know his timing. This wasn't just an awkward transition to a commercial break. He cut to commercial break directly after J.D. Vance's response because Stephanopoulos didn't want to contend with what J.D. Vance said. They were talking about Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, and this kind of bizarre, stupid allegation that Tom Homan took $50,000 from undercover FBI agents who were trying to entrap him because they were trying to get him on taking a bribe to give certain people government contracts. Should he actually be part of the Trump administration? This was before Tom Homan was actually in the Trump administration. It's convoluted, it's weird, and we'll talk about the substance of that in a second. But this is what J.D. Vance's response was to Stephanopoulos when Stephanopoulos pushed him on it. And then, of course, you see what Stephanopoulos does in reaction to Vance's response. Take a look.
I don't know what tape you're referring to, George. I saw media reports that Tom Homan accepted a bribe. There's no evidence of that. And here's, George, why fewer and fewer people watch your program and why you're losing credibility. Because you're talking for now 5 minutes with the Vice President of the United States about this story regarding Tom Homan, a story that I've read about, but I don't even know the video that you're talking about. Meanwhile, low-income women can't get food because the Democrats and Chuck Schumer have shut down the government. Right now, we're trying to figure out how to pay our troops because Chuck Schumer has shut down the government. You are focused on a bogus story. You're insinuating criminal wrongdoing against a guy who has done nothing wrong instead of focusing on the fact that our country is struggling because our government's shut down. Let's talk about the real issues, George. I think the American people would benefit much more from that than from you going down some weird left-wing rabbit hole where the facts clearly show that Tom Homan didn't engage in any criminal wrongdoing.
It's not a weird left-wing rabbit hole. I didn't insinuate anything. I asked you whether Tom Homan accepted $50,000, as was heard on an audio tape recorded by the FBI in September 2024, and you did not answer the question. Thank you for your time this morning.
No,
Well,
George,
Governor
I
J.B.
said that I
Pritzker's
don't.
Up next, we'll be right back.
Oh, my. Let me just tell you, as someone who interviews high-profile people on this show from time to time, if it is even so much as a lower-level member of Congress, you do not interrupt them. It's one thing to interrupt, a quote-unquote subject matter expert or someone that you're grilling or a friend you're having a conversation with. Like, yeah, you're in the driver's seat of the show. You can kind of direct the conversation. Sometimes a strategic interruption is appropriate. It's not disrespectful if you let them make their point. That's fine. That's all about, how to judiciously pilot the conversation that you're conducting. But the rules of the road in broadcast are just a little bit different when you are interviewing an elected official. You don't actually interrupt them, especially with a commercial break. The Vice President of the United States, let me just pose it to you this way. Do you think George Stephanopoulos would have cut away from Kamala Harris while she was talking and not just speak over the top of her, but take her off the screen and turn it to a commercial break? Can you even imagine? Imagine for a second if it was even more than that. Imagine if Fox News did that. If Fox News got Kamala Harris on the show and they were interviewing her, she started saying something they don't like, and while she was speaking, they panned the camera away and cut to commercial. It would cause such an uproar in our country. Every headline on every mainstream media organization would read, misogynist, right-wing, Fox News silences sitting vice president who is a black woman. The outrage would be enormous. And here's the thing. Here's my actual question about this. I don't even care that much about the Tom Homan allegations because it was an entrapment exercise conducted by the Biden FBI. The Biden FBI is the most corrupt FBI in the history of the FBI. And so the credibility that I give to their allegations, well, let's just say this. I am Catholic. I am a parent who is against critical race theory and transing kids and children in public school, and I'm pro-life. I was called a domestic extremist, a terrorist by Biden's FBI. So do I give a lot of credibility to any kind of allegation coming from the Biden FBI? No, I don't. We have a team member on this show who you are familiar with, who was personally targeted by the Biden FBI, who was awakened at the crack of dawn to FBI agents, Biden's FBI pounding on his door. They put him in handcuffs, took his laptop, took his phone, subject him to years of the processes, the punishment, threats of charging him because what, he investigated Ashley Biden's diary and didn't even publish it? That Biden FBI? Do I give credibility to that group, that intelligence operation, law enforcement, the federal government weaponized against the American people? Yeah, I don't care at all the allegations that came from the Biden FBI. So Tom Homan was a private citizen. An FBI agent came to him with a paper bag. Here's my question. Why was the Biden FBI trying to entrap Tom Homan, which is pretty obviously what they were trying to do? They were trying to catch him because they didn't want President Trump's mass deportation program. They didn't want an effective border czar like Tom Homan is. Why were they handing him a paper bag of money if that's what they were doing, when radical trans groups like the Socialist Rifle Association and the John Brown Gun Club and Armed Queers of Salt Lake City and Antifa and the Party of Socialism and Liberation and the People's Forum and the Answer Coalition and Behind Enemy Lines and that whole ecosphere of radical leftist groups that are coordinating to commit violent acts against us, conservatives, and against our country, the United States of America? Why is the FBI, why do they care about Tom Homan and some dumb paper bag of money? When these groups, motivated openly by communist ideology, funded by an American communist who's hiding out in Shanghai, doing the bidding of the Chinese Communist Party, is happening under their noses. That's the question that I have as a result of this. But of course, George Stephanopoulos, Bill Clinton's White House communications director, he was later the senior advisor to the president. That's just a fancy word for the fixer. He doesn't want any of that exposed, does he? He doesn't want to contend with J.D. Vance. And by the way, the reason that at the time Senator J.D. Vance was selected to be Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate is because of clips like this. Because he's so calmly, without any adrenaline, without any increase in energy, just brutally, savagely, and oh so politely dismantles everything that the left does to lie to you. It's my favorite version of J.D. Vance, my absolute favorite version. And of course, he did what he's been doing for the last, since he came onto the public stage. He's exposing the left for exactly who they are. And right now, the left has embraced evil. They are permitting evil. They are complicit in evil. And that includes mainstream media, who run the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party, which right now is but a conglomeration of these leftist groups who are trying to kill us. Meanwhile, of course, Donald Trump, President of the United States, if this guy is not the most powerful peacemaker on the face of the earth, then I don't know who else could possibly win that title. And the funny part is, before we even get into the Nobel Peace Prize and President Trump going to Israel and saving the Palestinians from genocide, which is, of course, what the left has been telling us is happening over there, yet they're strangely silent, as Benny Johnson mentioned earlier in the show. They're strangely silent about this, even though Donald Trump is the savior of the Palestinians. President Trump had an observation from all the way back during one of his debates with Hillary Clinton. You remember those debates? Oh, were those debates entertaining? President Trump said Hillary Clinton once accused him of having a personality that would start wars all around the world. And this is what President Trump said in response. Take a look.
To say it. But when you settle 8 wars in 8 months, that means you don't like war. Everyone thought I was going to be brutal. In fact, I remember Hillary Clinton during a debate, she said, look at him, he's going to go into war with everybody. And actually, she said, he's got a personality that's all about war. No, and my personality actually is all about stopping wars. And it seems to work. It seems to work. But it also means there's name change and our attitude that we're not going to go into a war. But if we do, we're going to win that war like nobody has ever won a war before. We will not be politically correct, but we're not going to be there. And I think, as you mentioned.
All right. D. Breed in the live chat on YouTube said, Jesus is the Prince of Peace. Yes, D. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. But you know what? The Holy Father, Pope Leo, asked Catholics all around the world, and it doesn't matter if you're Catholic, this will still be interesting to you, asked Catholics all around the world to pray a rosary a day in the month of October for peace, specifically between Israel and Hamas. And what, 12, 11 days into that month of October, what happened? Donald Trump brokered a peace deal between two enemies who have spent the past, not just 2 years since this war has escalated, but have spent their entire existence fighting one another. I don't think that's a coincidence, nor do I think it's a coincidence that Donald Trump brokered this peace deal. I have hope for it to a certain extent. I think that Hamas is motivated by their religious ideology. They are jihadist by ideology, which means that they are called by their very religious belief to spend their entire lives waging war against Israel. So no, I don't think it's possible to fully stop them from assaulting Israel. But there's also a difference between Islamist individuals, hypothetically throwing rocks at Israel versus cutting off the funding and the capacity for Hamas to be an organized militant group that has war-fighting capacity against Israel. And Donald Trump has proven that he is going to reduce Hamas into as little of a group as possible, as least effective of a group as possible. And again, this is not a one-time thing. This was not just a coincidence. There's a reason that the 2025 Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize winner, not Donald Trump, for reasons I'll explain in just a second. It somewhat makes sense why it's not Donald Trump, as funny as you might think that I'm saying that. The winner of the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize, her name is Maria Corina Machado. She is a Venezuelan resistance leader. She was the recipient a couple days ago of the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize. However, she dedicated her prize partly to Donald Trump for supporting Venezuelan democracy, which reinforces Donald Trump's narrative that his entire goal as president is to be the peacemaker. Take a look at this video.
And they decided to dedicate it to President Trump because he deserves it. Because not only has he been involved in only a few months in solving 8 wars, but his actions have been decisive to have Venezuela now at a threshold of freedom after 26 years of tyranny that have destroyed the lives of millions of Venezuela, destabilized the region, and undermined the institutions in the United States, because having Venezuela as a safe haven of the enemies of the United States and using our territory and our resources to hurt the American people and American institutions is certainly a threat to the national security of the United States and the security of the hemisphere. But President Trump has been very clear, courageous in terms of dismantling this criminal structure. And on behalf of the Venezuelan people, I reaffirmed our gratitude and our commitment to this cause for the whole America. So I insist he deserves it.
Can you even imagine? I mean, how the tides have changed. Can you imagine a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize dedicating it to President Trump because, as she said, he deserves it? Listen, Benny Johnson was correct earlier in the show when he said, this is the test. The entire left, the entirety, from the Antifa Black Bloc militants to the pro-Hamas protesters that turned into rioters on college campuses, to the personalities, the left-wing personalities, media personalities on X, to the mainstream media, to the Democrat elected officials and the DNC apparatus, have been repeating over and over that Israel is wrong. Israel is bad. Israel is the villain here. What's happening is a genocide of the Palestinians because Israel's response to October 7th, which they just dismissed, by the way, they ignore the fact that even though Hamas returned all of the living hostages, there were no women among the surviving hostages. What do you think happened to those women? Of all the hostages returned by Hamas to Israel today, it was all men. None were women, because what happened to those women? What happened to those women is what happened to the women at that music festival on October 7th. Because it wasn't just a military on military attack. It was Hamas as a terror organization targeting innocent civilians, specifically targeting women and children and the elderly, not just as military targets, not just, and I say just, for killing, but for the most brutal rape imaginable. On purpose, intentionally. No women survived as hostages. The only ones returned today were men. And the left, who's been decrying this so-called genocide in Gaza because they didn't think that Israel has a right to exist, let alone defend themselves against the demonic assault against them. Where are they today? How come they're not out in the streets cheering? I mean, I have these visions of after World War II ended, people, Americans, flooding the streets, cheering in camaraderie and joy and gratitude that the war was over. Where is that today? Where are the leftists? Why are they not praising President Trump as the peacemaker? Where is their gratitude? Are they not happy that President Trump has brokered the end of the war between Israel and Hamas? Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe they aren't happy because they're liars. They've never cared about the Palestinian people. They've never cared about, they don't even believe that it's a genocide because it's not. The genocide against the Palestinians was committed by Hamas, who used the Palestinian people as human shields. First, they indoctrinated them, so a lot of the Palestinian people actually agree with Hamas, and the rest they forced into militant positions because Hamas placed everything, all of their weaponry and their military strategy planning sessions in hospitals and schools and in amongst civilian populations so that if Israel came after Hamas militants, they also had civilian casualties, including children. But the left doesn't celebrate this because they never actually cared about this. They just used this accusation of Palestinian genocide as a form of their resistance against President Trump and against Western civilization and against the United States of America, against Christianity and against you. And this brings us back to the Nobel Peace Prize. The Nobel Peace Prize, the submissions or the nominations for the candidates for who should win the Nobel Peace Prize, that actually happens in January of each year. And then the award itself is not given until October. So yes, President Trump was nominated this year in January, but it was just days after he took office. He had not yet brokered all of the different peace deals that he brokered. But in 2026, in just a couple months, when are we? October, November, December, January, 3 months from now, when the nominations for the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize begin, this will be what you should look for. This will be a perfect illustration and exposure of the true colors of the left, because everyone on the left and the right, Hollywood celebrities that have decried what's happening in Gaza, Democrat politicians, the people on the streets, the agitators, the rioters, even Democrat voters who are anti-Israel, young people especially, you should be nominating President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. And if you don't, you've exposed yourself, because listen to this. Listen to this. In 2025, this year alone, President Trump has brokered the end of, you can call them violent conflicts, you can call them battles, you can call them wars. He's brokered a ceasefire between Armenia and Azerbaijan. He brokered the first phase of the Israel-Hamas Gaza ceasefire, and then this second phase, which seems like it's going to stick, the return of the hostages. He brokered the Russia-Ukraine ceasefire that, no, it didn't last, but it was something. He brokered a de-escalation between India and Pakistan. He brokered the border resolution between Cambodia and Thailand. He brokered the ceasefire of the 12-day hot war between Israel and Iran. I could go on and on. He brokered the end of the dispute between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Nile. If this man does not win the Nobel Peace Prize in 2026, then anybody who opposes him being awarded that distinction just hates him, because they hate everything about the United States of America and conservative values and Western civilization and Christianity. There is zero excuse for Trump not winning the 2026 Nobel Peace Prize. Zero excuse. And by the way, this is what I would like to see. President Trump hosted a roundtable late last week, about Antifa. He hosted this at the White House, and he brought in figures that you are familiar with. Andy Ngo is one of them. Julio Rosas is another one. These journalists who have embedded themselves within Antifa, not just recently, but over the course of the past few years. These people are experts in Antifa because they were just single-minded in their pursuit of the truth about Antifa. And President Trump wanted to learn more about Antifa from the actual experts, those who have been reporting on Antifa for years. So he brought them in to brief him at the White House. And there's a journalist that was invited. Her name is Brandy Cruz, and she actually used to be leftist. She didn't used to be conservative. She didn't used to, her name, let's just say, was previously not in contention for an invitation to the Trump White House, especially on a topic like left-wing violence. And she had this amazing statement that she made to President Trump when she was at the White House, where she looked at him and she said, Mr. President, I'm living proof that you can recover from Trump derangement syndrome when you actually accept reality. Because this journalist, Brandy Cruz, said, I used to suffer from Trump derangement syndrome, and look at me now. And I want to show you this video because of the implications it should have after President Trump brokered this end of the Israel-Hamas war. This is Brandy Cruz at the White House last week at the Antifa Roundtable. Take a look.
I'm living proof that you can recover from TDS. I had strong Trump derangement syndrome for probably 8 years. This is one of the reasons I recovered from it. And by the way, it's much better to not have TDS. I'm happier, I'm healthier, more successful. I even think I got a little more attractive after I got rid of my Trump derangement syndrome. Yes. You know, I'm a reporter in Seattle, and frankly, I could not care any less what any of you have to say about this meeting. Could not care any less. We're not here for you. I'm not here to convince any of you that Antifa is a real thing, because if you have not come to that conclusion by now, you are never going to come to that conclusion because you don't want to see it. And you're going to go and you're going to say it's a bunch of right-wing conservative influencers who are here spinning a tale. I was one of you. I was a mainstream reporter in Seattle for 10 years. I was a TV reporter on the streets doing my job, and I was still assaulted by Antifa. So it's not about being conservative. It's about people who go there and show what they're doing. And when I saw, after all those years, that the media wouldn't be honest about what was happening, that Democratic politicians wouldn't be honest about what was happening, I thought, well, gosh, if they're not being honest about that, maybe they're not being honest about President Trump either. And it opened my mind to just looking at things for what they were. And now I find you quite funny, actually. Now it's like I said, I'm much happier.
I think I would nominate that clip, Brandy Cruz's explanation of her recovery from Trump derangement syndrome, as the best clip of the week. The best clip of the week. But here's the thing. We should be seeing more of these. We should be seeing a flood of videos from the left, from leftists who accuse President Trump of, not caring about Palestinians and being complicit in genocide, and of being a warmonger and wanting to drag the U.S. into a forever war because he bombed Iranian nuclear facilities. There was panic, even among some people on the right, by the way. There was panic. There was panic among leftists about President Trump being a warmonger, starting all the way back with Hillary Clinton through this very day. We better see more of these videos, like Brandy Cruz. We better see more leftists who are looking at the reality on the ground, what President Trump has actually done, and saying, you know what? I'm going to have the humility to say that I was wrong. And if we don't see these videos, if leftists don't come out and celebrate, if leftists don't consider this to be a win, if leftists don't thank President Trump for this, if they don't recognize President Trump's historic role as the most effective peacemaker president, I would argue, in modern American history, then you know that they have been liars all along. Grant Areno in the live chat says, didn't they give Obama the Nobel Peace Prize for sneezing? Yes, actually, I'm glad you brought this up, because Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2009. Now, think about this. Obama was elected in November of 2008. He took office at the end of January in 2009. The nominations for Nobel Peace Prize candidates happened in January. So the month that President Obama took office, but he took office at the end of that month. So when he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in October, it wasn't for anything he had done as president. He was nominated for this just days after he took the oath of office and became the chief executive for the United States. So essentially, Obama was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his slogan, Hope and Change, which is a perfect example of what I'm talking about when I say the left does not care about peace. The left cares about their political ideology. If you give it to Obama for nothing and you don't give it to Trump, the most effective peacemaker president in modern American history, then you are wholly corrupted by your evil ideology. Wholly corrupted. And by the way, speaking of Trump derangement syndrome and Obama couldn't even say President Trump's name in his X post about the peace agreement between Israel and Hamas. President Trump brokered this deal, and Obama could not bring himself to say President Trump's name. So maybe Obama should take a look at Brandy Cruz's video here, but this is what I mean. They do not care about peace. They care only about their ideology. The same ideology that motivated the despicable individual to send a terroristic threat to Benny Johnson and his family, which is what we talked about at the top of the show. All right, guys, that's all I have for you today. Please subscribe to the show. Go to youtube.com/Liz Wheeler, x.com/Liz_Wheeler. We're on Spotify, or we have video on Spotify. We've been on Spotify forever. We have video on Spotify now. So go to Spotify, search The Liz Wheeler Show, click subscribe, leave us a 5-star review if you would. I know a lot of you have been doing this, and I greatly appreciate it. It helps other people find the show, which has been growing by leaps and bounds thanks to you. You guys know I appreciate you sitting here with me each and every day. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.